How's it going, everybody? It is Jaku. So today I'm going to be doing a discussion video regarding the current metagame right now in Yu-Gi-Oh! As of today's date, it is October 3rd, and we are currently we're going into the new format right now for October 2014 metagame. As you can see right now, these are the three decks right now that I believe are pretty much going to maintain their title, and they're still going to be top decks until we get the introduction of the new support from the next challengers, which is coming up pretty soon. But I figured I'd go ahead and I'd give this video just so that we all have a little bit of a reference, so that we all know what it is that's going on, and that I give everybody a better idea for those people who are either already good at this game and know what's going on in the meta, or for people who are getting into the competitive scene so that they can see what it is that's going on and be able to at least fight back. But currently there are three top decks right now dominating the format, which are the Shaddolls, there's the Satellarknights, and there are the Burning Abyss. Those are the three best decks right now of the format, in my opinion, as well as the opinion of a lot of people that I've so far talked with on a day-to-day basis. But anyways, let's go ahead and I'm going to get into the first deck of the top three right now, which is going to be, well, I think it's going to be a little bit kind of not so much of a top deck anymore, but eventually it might slow down. We don't know yet. Shaddolls. So Shaddolls is primarily spellcasters. There's only one fairy so far, which is just El Shaddol Construct, which is this one right here. But the archetype itself revolves a lot around basically fusion summoning, and all of the monsters get their effects whenever they're sent to the graveyard. They all trigger at that time. And the thing is that the main spell card of the deck, Shaddol Fusion, it allows them to fuse from their hand or field like a normal polymerization, but if your opponent controls an extra deck monster that was special summoned from the extra deck, they can special summon their monster by using materials from the main deck of their own. So they're able to access their own main deck using the Shaddol Fusion card. Not only that, but it also has some other really good cards in the deck, like Sinister Shadow Games, which allows it very good synergy, and it lets it go ahead and start speeding up the deck very quickly. Overall, the deck's consistency level, as it says there, it's very high, because the deck is able to make a lot of pluses just off of monsters being sent to the graveyard in order to fuel the fodder for the fusion summon. And there's very little advantage lost because of the fact that it's from the main deck. If anything, that helps speed you up. So Shaddolls are very powerful in that sense. Midrash, as it's called, but it's now called El Shaddol Winda. I preferred Midrash. Midrash is a better name in my opinion. But anyways, El Shaddol Winda's effect is just basically a stun. Stuns you so that you can't special summon more than once per turn, and that locks down your plays very, very heavily. So unless you're able to drop like a Chaos Sorcerer or Blackluster Soldier, or you're able to get something with one special summon on the field into your extra deck, it's very, very controlling. Shaddolls do a very good job at controlling the field and controlling your opponent. Pros about the deck. It floats very well. The deck itself does get a lot of advantage from just being able to do the fusion summons, so that's where it gets a lot of its power from. But also, it has access to super polymerization, which is just an unfair card, and the fact that this deck can use it as well as it can, and especially in this current lineup where the next top deck is a light deck, Satellarknights, and the other top deck is a dark deck, Burning Abyss, Shaddolls have a very easy access against the other three matchups. So Super Polymerization is a very powerful card for the deck, and fortunately it was hit, putting it to 1, so that definitely helps shut down the deck a little bit, but still, Shaddolls are still going to be extremely powerful, even with Super Poly at 1. And of course, there's, well, I made a little bit of a typo here, but it's supposed to be, dark attribute support and light attribute. I was thinking Shaddol, but yeah, no, Shaddolls have a lot of dark attribute support, so they can main things like Allure of Darkness into their deck, and works very well for them. Armageddonite gives the deck a tremendous amount of synergy, and there's other things that just support dark monsters that can fit into the deck. But the deck itself is very, very powerful, and it does maintain very good consistency, but it does have its flaws. And one of the cons of the deck is that all of the monsters pretty much need the graveyard in order to be able to trigger their effects. So if you're able to shut them out of their graveyard, or you're able to stop them while they're in the graveyard, you take out a lot of the power that the deck has. And the thing is also, and this is something I've been noticing lately in the way that the deck's been played, the fusion boss monsters are the main win condition for the deck, and the thing is that unless the deck is introducing another archetype like artifacts or light swarms or something else into the deck to be able to help keep it consistent, then the deck has a very hard time without its boss monsters on board. So if you can stop those, you also are able to stop a lot of the deck from being able to be strong. And of course, just with any light and dark based decks, there are very, very strong cards to be able to hate against the decks. Light Imprisoning Mirror, Shadow Imprisoning Mirror, long-standing cards that are able to hit these kinds of decks, and it just cripples the deck very, very hard. But The Shaddolls are very overall strong, and it's definitely reasons why they're in the top 3 right now. How the ban list is going to affect them, the only thing that they really hit from the deck was just super polymerization, so we'll see how that ends up working out for the deck. On to the next deck that we have on our list, Satellarknights. So Satellarknights is more of a warrior archetype, and the Satellarknights work a lot by being able to make plays off of their summons. The 3 monsters that you're seeing right here besides Delteros are Altair, Deneb, and Vega. The standard combo from what I've seen is that you like to set up Deneb first turn if you can't help it and be able to search out Altair or Vega, and then you're able to make your plays further from that point. So you'll be able to go into, for say, something like an ideal turn 2 would be Vega into Altair, and Altair's effect into Deneb, who might have more than likely been destroyed. Then you're able to go ahead and get your effects off like that, and you're just able to plus. You're able to go into Delteros, which is the boss monster of the deck, and then it just lets you keep making more plays off of that. So the deck really does well in being able to maintain its advantage and consistency through its summons. And one of the things that I like about this deck is the fact that it has its own counter trap card, which is actually really powerful, which is right there, Stellar Nova Alpha on the corner right here. But Stellar Alpha Nova's effect is basically, I believe it's more of a solemn judgment for spells and traps and for monster effects. It negates them as well, but it allows you to just tribute one of your Satellarknight monsters to negate it, and if you do, draw 1 card. So the card basically pays back the one that it spent itself to negate the 1 card your opponent activates. So you never minus with it. That's a really good aspect about the card. So pluses on the summons of each monsters. These are the pros. Light and warrior type support. So again, same concept. Dark monsters have a lot of support, well, so do light monsters. And the thing is that this is a very warrior driven deck, so cards that support warriors are actually very strong here as well. Recently we had reinforcement of the army going to 3, so Satellarknights just got a lot of love with that one going on right there. And like I said, the counter trap card does not minus them, and it keeps a very, very good control against the opponent. So this overall is a very strong deck. I like Satellarknights a lot. I think that it is a very good and consistent deck, and I think in the right hands of in the hands of a right player, it can definitely shape up to be a really, well, really dangerous threat. Of course, this deck also has a lot of drawbacks to itself. It's very, very dependent on the summons being successful, and what I mean by that is that the monsters don't get bottomless, they don't get torrentialed, that they don't have their effects negated, because if you negate one, then that basically stops the combo from being able to make them spam out their whole hand or their graveyard, and they just basically need to go uninterrupted. So that's why it relies a lot on staples and on back row cards to make sure that it can protect itself as much as it can. There's a lot of side deck hate for this, and I know this personally because I went to a regional and I just sided in, like, I believe I sided in 7 cards against this matchup, and it basically crapped on the deck. So the light warrior aspect for itself, there's a lot of light hate and there's a lot of warrior hate as well. So there's things that this deck definitely needs to watch out for. If the summons are interrupted in any way, then the deck definitely gets shut down a lot. And I want to go ahead and explain here, I'm saying relies heavily on the back row for the cons. The thing that I mean by that is that this deck does need a lot of back row in order to be able to back itself up, and that's present in Stellar Alpha Nova, but it's also the fact that you need cards like Call of the Haunted to revive your combos and just keep up your consistency in the deck, and you also need to just use other cards to be able to stop your opponent from being able to ruin your plays or from being able to take too much advantage before you can set up. And I personally remember going to regional and I main decked Royal Decree. I flipped that on my opponent when they set 4 back row. It locked down their entire back row, and I proceeded to pretty much just go ahead and go through all my plays uninterrupted, and well, it just ruined the deck a lot. So Royal Decree is definitely a good card to answer this deck, or Trap Stun as well does the exact same thing. But I would just say that as far as the deck's strength and weaknesses go, it is very strong still. This deck has the ability to be able to go very, very aggressive, be able to spam out a lot of monsters all at once, and it's able to protect itself from the summons not having be stopped or from not having anything be interrupting them. That's actually part of Satellarknight Delteros' ability, is to make sure that summons go through uninterrupted. So that's one of the big benefits of this deck, is just it maintains a lot of advantage and it can OTK opponents very, very easily. Now onto the last deck of the trinity of the top tiers right now, and my personal favorite of the top right now, Burning Abyss. I like Burning Abyss's playstyle a lot. I like the concept of the deck, and I personally am a big fan of Dante's Inferno, so I can definitely relate to the lore behind it. But let's go ahead and get into it. So it's primarily Fiend based. So a lot of the monsters that you see right there, the level 3s, are all Fiend type monsters, and they all are able to get their effects off by similar to Shaddolls, they get their effects off by going to the graveyard. So the thing I like about this deck more though is that it floats a lot more easily, because Shaddolls require being sent by card effects, whereas Burning Abyss can be sent by any means. This card is sent to the graveyard, they get their effects. They can be sent as cost, which is why they're consistent with things like Phoenix Wing Windblast with Karma Cut, makes the deck very, very live, as well as just they maintain their field presence and hand advantage by triggering and getting their effects off. And one of the things I like about the deck is the fact that it is extremely consistent. Very, very rarely are you not able to make a first turn rank 3 play, at least from how I've seen this deck play out, especially because of the fact that this deck can run one of the best search engine monsters in the game, Tour Guide from the Underworld. Every single one of these is a target for Tour Guide, and the monster here on the left hand side, Skarm, he himself has the ability to recruit another Tour Guide to your hand. Once he goes to the graveyard during the end phase, search another one out. So this deck maintains a lot of consistency in itself. It maintains a lot of hand advantage, and it can maintain a field presence. The boss monster Dante here has the ability to send cards to the graveyard similar to Card Trooper. Mills 3 cards from the top of the deck. He gains 500 attack bonus for each monster sent this way. Not only that though, but after he's done attacking, he resets himself to defense position at the end of the battle phase, and he has a beefy 2500 defense, so he is really good in that aspect because he can survive pretty much most attacks that would come at him. But at the same time, his effect also triggers, just like all of the other Burning Abyss monsters. Whenever he's sent to the graveyard, his effect activates. But the thing that I think that is really cool about this deck is that the combos that it can make with him and with another monster called Ghost Trick Alucard, with using a card called Rank Up Magic Astral Force. It allows him to rank up the monsters, and you can rank up Dante, in this case, Constellar Pleiades. So being able to make a Constellar Pleiades and potentially have it go onto the field with 3 materials, that's pretty nasty. So I think that that's one of the things that I like about this deck a lot, is that fact that it can make Pleiades, who's able to shuffle the cards back into the extra deck or bounce them back to the hand. So in terms of Shaddolls, he doesn't let them touch the graveyard, and therefore they don't trigger. Against the Burning Abyss matchup, their own Dantes would not be able to trigger as well. So this card actually answers those kinds of matchups very well. I'm talking about Pleiades. But yeah, so like I said, pros. This deck floats, in my opinion, the best of the current meta lineup, since it just triggers anytime it's sent to the graveyard. It combos extremely well with Rank Up Magic Astral Force, and a Tour Guide from the Underworld just gives the deck an unbelievable amount of speed that makes it very, very good. Cons that I do have to mention about this deck though, because like I said, every deck has its drawbacks. It's very, very dependent on rank 3 and 5 engine. It cannot really play level 4s, it cannot play level 6 or 7. It needs to play 3s, and then it can only play 5s through the use of Rank of Magic Astral Force. So this deck definitely has a very limited engine to go from. The best monsters I've seen normally played in the deck are usually Dante himself, as well as Ghost Trick Alucard. Those are the best ones I see normally get played. Of course, the only other really hilarious combination I've seen be played is just Chronomaly Crystal Chrononaut and Numerical Magic Astral Force. Use that to go into number C69 God Medallion, which just is basically, you cannot walk into it without risking your board blowing up. But yeah, so it's very reliant on that, and it does have strong monsters, but it doesn't have a lot more access beyond that. So rank 3 is pretty much what it has to stick to. Same thing though as Shaddolls. This deck is dependent on its graveyard. So if you're able to shut down the graveyard or their access to it, then you definitely cripple this deck a lot. And there's one card in particular that got a ruling that really hurts this deck badly, which is Chain Disappearance. Chain Disappearance has now been ruled, as of this time of the recording of this video, to hit Dante as well as the rest of its copies from the extra deck. So the Dante will not only not go to the graveyard and not get its effect off, but you also banish the only other copy that they might have in their extra deck and effectively take out the boss monster of the deck. So the deck overall has an extremely consistent engine, and everything works very good about it, but it does have a lot of side deck cards that can hate against it. Because the thing is that it has a lot of Dark Hate. There's a lot of cards that can counteract Fiend monster effects and be able to change the warrior types that they have, as well as just the light aspect into Dante and Pleiades that can definitely be hurt a lot. So if you're able to negate the effects and not let them be able to go ahead and float, then this deck will definitely start to sink very fast. But like I said, Burning Abyss in my opinion is currently the best deck and I believe that it is probably the deck that has the best chance to top out of all 3 of the decks that are currently in this lineup, but that's my personal opinion. So I guess something to conclude on is what for players to focus on for this format. So for you meta players, this is my personal suggestions for what you should try and invest into. My personal recommendation, and this is taking into account what's coming out, would be Burning Abyss, because Burning Abyss have been announced to have a new tuner and a new synchro monster be coming out. The tuner monster's effects are unknown as of this day, but the new monster is going to be Virgil, who has the ability to be able to bounce and shuffle cards on the field, which is extremely good. So Virgil is going to be a great card to be able to answer problems in this meta currently. So I personally feel that Burning Abyss is going to be one of the top tier decks, and it's going to maintain that title, assuming that the ban list does not hit the deck too crazily. Second deck to invest in would definitely be Satellarknights, mainly for the fact that they're also beginning getting new support sometime soon, and they're going to be getting a monster soon called Satellarknight Trios, whose effect is basically I summon myself and I bounce the entire field back up to both of our hands. That is pretty nasty, so I feel like that's going to be a really good card for the deck, and it's going to be getting a lot more consistency because it's going to be getting a Pot of Avarice card into the deck, and it's going to be making it just be able to recycle all of its monsters and be able to keep the advantage coming. And then third is going to be Shaddolls. I'm not saying that Shaddolls are bad, or I'm not saying that Shaddolls are going to be slowing down, but I feel that out of the 3, Shaddolls are going to be having the hardest time to being able to keep up with what Burning Abyss is going to be capable of doing soon, as well as what Satellarknights are going to be able to do to a fully developed Shaddol field. However, Shaddolls are starting to mimic the Omni Heroes, where they're able to have one of each attribute, and they require the Shaddol monster plus the monster of the specific attribute to summon. So I can see this as a preemptive strike, what they did on Super Polymerization, because Super Polymerization and this Omni Hero aspect is going to be very, very broken, or would have been very, very broken. So the fact that they hit Super Polymerization was a really good call on Konami's part, but I still feel that Shaddolls have a lot of potential because they were definitely the top deck for the last format for July 2014, and it's definitely a deck that can maintain a lot of advantage and a lot of consistency still, so it's not to be ruled out. Decks that are definitely going to be coming up soon are going to be the Yang Zing, Clypots, and the Heroes. And I say this because Yang Zings are going to be getting a new tuner as well as a new synchro monster, which are going to be giving the deck a lot of open doors. It's just a matter of the right player figuring out, well, the combos that are possible with that deck. And Clyports, because the deck has just got so much strength over in the OCG right now, and it's just got so much OTK potential. I can definitely see being top. And Heroes, eventually, if we get the new support for the deck, that might be a deck that might also be up and running for just its power. To you anti-meta players, though, however, if you're not choosing to play one of these current meta decks, I would suggest that you create or incorporate into your current decks something that can shut down their access to the graveyard. Make sure that they cannot get their effects off. And same thing, cause light and dark monsters to have their abilities be stopped in their tracks. Some really good cards I mentioned throughout this video: Shatter Imprisoning Mirror and Light Imprisoning Mirror. And I would also say Soul Drain, Forbidden Graveyard are great cards to be able to go ahead and mimic that same effect. Macrocosmos is another fantastic card to be able to go ahead and have a similar ability in this game because it doesn't let them hit the graveyard at all. Dimensional Fissure, same thing, doesn't let them hit the graveyard. Different Dimension Grounds pretty much acts as a Macrocosmos for one turn. And then there's Deity Crow, who you can use to be able to banish monsters from the graveyard that are key at the moment. If they target something in the graveyard, you can banish it. For instance, the Satellarknights, they target Deneb, banish Deneb. Against Burning Abyss, if they activate the effect of, I believe it's the effect of Graph that lets you add back one to your hand, or Dante, target the card that they would add back, they can add it back. So there's a lot of things that the decks can definitely do, but these are just some of the suggestions I would suggest if you want to go ahead and stop them, if you're going to go the anti-meta or a non-meta route. And otherwise, that's really all I have to say for this video, so I just wish the best of luck to everybody playing this format. I hope this video was able to help you get a bit of a better understanding on what to do and what to be able to react to this format. And like I said, just happy dueling, everybody. This has been Jaku. Catch you guys later.